So then we are back with more understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services, where we find in the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Tzayelic lineage, so then we can understand the time of the end. As per Yeshayahu the prophet, we find then the cities of the Messiah laid waste for many centuries, but also relates with the layer of the Gentiles regarding then the trade of the time of the end. And then as we read then Daniel the prophet, there are two extra chapters of Daniel, and then the first extra chapter regards the understanding of Baal and the dragon. So let's understand how it fits at the base of the statue. We understand the 11th chapter of Daniel relates with the second chapter, the base of the statue, where iron does not mix with the clay. Obviously, those nations related with iron during the time of the restoration period, those are then the Soviet Union, China, and Africa. Those are then the Kingdom of the North, Soviet Union, Kingdom of the East, China, and Kingdom of the South, Africa. Those are considered iron. The rest of us, during this time of the restoration period, we are then clay. So let's try to understand why. The period of time where then started the iron and clay system was then after then the coming down of the Roman Empire, then became the base of the statue. Some nations or kingdoms would be strong, some nations would be then weak. But then we find during the time of the 1,000 years of the seat, then we find an area where then we've heard many times the New World Order. Very understandably, because the holy cities were not around. From 1009 to 2009 is the time of the seat, thus devil or slandering. During this time, after 2009, then we've entered the time of the dragon. So instantly, after 2009, we've entered the period of the dragon. There are many understandings or layers related with it. Firstly, then we find the angel explaining the end of the 1,000 years of the seat, knowledge would increase. Previously, the angel said people would go to and fro. So, going to and fro relates with the time of the seat without the holy cities. And then knowledge would increase starting then the period of the dragon. Dragon is China, because it's related directly with trade. So let's understand these and set on stone. Because the understanding comes from the very instructions where nobody has then the right or the forward motion to change what was then recorded. So then, the extra chapter of Daniel related with the Baal and dragon relates then with China and the rest of the world. Let's understand how it plays. Firstly, then we find our time of the restoration period of the holy cities of the Messiah laid waste for many centuries. And then there is a shift of the Gentile level also. Because as we read then Yeshayahu the prophet, known as Isaiah, you observe then there is a section of it related, even the Gentiles would be included in a plan. So later in the second chapter of Daniel, and then Baal and the dragon, found in the Catholic Bible, or then the Apocrypha, then we understand China must remain then separated from the rest. It is absolutely certainty and sure. Because we are speaking of a period of time where there is then a layer of understanding, the 20th chapter of Galah. However, the 20th chapter of Galah does not belong there. autumn feast, or the second half of the instructions, only relates with the sounding of the shofars and the cups. The scoundrels of those translators, they had no clue. So give them a bit of a slack, because they were not educated in the holy instructions. So they did the best they could. However, when they put together the scripture, they did not know how to relate time and season. They were kind of glancing at it, and they thought it would be the best fit in the, those scripture of the codex. They ended up gluing where they don't belong. So the autumn feast only relates with the sounding of the shofars and the cups. So then let's understand the rest of it prior of the autumn feast, because our time at the moment is prior of the autumn feast. So then we find Baal and the dragon. So the Baalian system is any other than the dragon. Couldn't be any simpler. What understands is, so the understanding comes from then the dragon being separated from the rest of the world. Obviously, because only the dragon has the precision. Where do you find the most automated and computerized trade system in the planet? It comes from China. So then we recognize China is the precision dragon. It's not a bad name. From the scripture viewpoint, is a very positive understanding, because knowledge would increase, and then dragon would be a time where we are at. But then the understanding goes further from what most people understand. That is, the Apocrypha repleted with the holy instructions also. You find, for instance, the extra chapters of Daniel, extremely important. You find in Maccabeus, 1st and 2nd, extremely important. So every time there is a document of the instructions related with any portion of the scripture, we must study and understand the content and the context. So when we read it, then Baal and the dragon, then we find the dragon must be then separated from the rest of the world. And the Baalians must be working with each other. So then the best course of action per instructions is then for the Chinese hiring then the northern kingdom. That's why then you have the base of the statue, the 11th chapter of Daniel. You find then the iron kingdoms. Kingdom of the North, Soviet Union. Kingdom of the East, China. And Kingdom of the South, Africa. So then, as we understand, the Messiah said not a layer is going to be left undone. Those layers must be completed. That's why we have then Daniel, and we have the extra chapters that should be in the scripture, because it gives you the spiritual understanding of the dragon and the Baalian system. You don't understand trade only by itself. You have to understand the layer of the spiritual areas of the world, but not directly related with the trade, but yet there is a spiritual understanding with it. So then we can expect at some point China then protecting itself against Baalians and hiring then the Soviet Union to do the planning for them. Because up there is no BS. Either there is a deal, and then there is a backing up of the deal, transportation and so on and so forth. It turns into a document, signed, stamped, and then it's sent over to China for production. They would act as managers. So when the nations around the world, they want products from China, they don't go to China anymore. They go to the Soviet Union. Because any other system other than the dragon system is Baal. And the Balians then, they go through a system of the Northern Kingdom where they simply filter. Try to understand, it's not a bad tone. It is the filtering of trade. So with this filtering of trade, then we understand China no longer has to have these people going over there and trying to change the system, because every time there is a visit over there, then we find the most strangest situations ever. So China doesn't have to be exposed anymore to these Balians. They simply hire the services of the Northern Kingdom. In exchange for this privilege, obviously then the Soviet Union would provide China with oil and gas. So China receives the most important, and then they receive also the managing capability of the Northern Kingdom dealing with Balians. So then we can expect other countries not going to China anymore to make deals with them. They only want to receive those reports with deals already closed, backed up by finances, backed up by transportation, backed up by raw materials, and they simply receive the document and the deal is set, ready for production. Otherwise, then this future, there is no future. Because there are so many people trying to do what they want, others want to do the other way, others because they have some sort of a god of their own, others go because they have some sort of a war in their countries, and then gets banking in the system, and then gets scoundrels in the midst of the system, and they get people stealing from the system, and then it is up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. China doesn't have this problem. It always goes up, 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 up. So why would then China put themselves dealing with other people's always going up and down, up and down, up and down? They don't have to have these anymore. So then when we read the instructions, then we understand the second chapter, the 12th chapter, the 11th chapter, and those extra chapters in the Apocrypha. Then you understand the bear and the dragon. The dragon has to have his system. The dragon must remain quiet because it's always precise. There is no time for BS. Now we understand what it means, Bell and the dragon. So we can expect a closer relationship with China and the Soviet Union, and expect the Soviet Union to become then the planners. So we can expect a lot of talk and dealings with China and the Soviet Union, in quote, ironing out what they think would be the best for them in this initiation of the engine of the system of the future. And then, next 36 months, after China and the Soviet Union, they make this deal, they then can put the test for the next 36 months. Afterwards, then, when the Chinese understands this system is very solid, then they make their system available for the rest of the world. In other words, the system of China, for instance, of purchasing would be similar as eBay, and then with investments. But then people invest in the products. So then goes through the Soviet Union and then ends up in China, because must be filtered. So in other words, would be a simple, big worldwide eBay, but using the Chinese system because it's the most precise. It is the system of the dragon. The Balian system doesn't work. In a minute is down, then a minute is up, then a minute down and up and down, up and down. The market hates this up and down. Market must be always going up so people can project what they want to do in the future. Otherwise, countries can project what they should be doing. So then as China in the future, after this 36 months of this test, then they can provide a system similar as eBay with their entire factoring database of production. If you want to invest in a specific product, where do you think nations are going to purchase the most? You invest in a product. Then the planner up there in the Northern Kingdom makes a calculation of how much you should receive as people purchase the product, depending on how much you invest. It's not a big share, it's a tiny share. However, if you multiply these by 100,000 more 900,000 other products, then you get a tiny share at the end of the month. And a tiny share, not truly tiny share, but you get a nice share at the end of the month. So then China always protected. There is no longer going up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. Because China doesn't have to expose itself. China is the factory of the world. They produce the most of the bulk of the products. And China must earn the Eastern Kingdom. If nations would produce themselves, they wouldn't be able, because they can't compete with China. So then you begin to understand, Bell and the Dragon. Then you find the Chinese hiring the service of the Northern Kingdom. The Northern Kingdom in turn gives then oil and gas for them to do the work, and then the Soviet Union becomes the focus point of the gathering of the nations as far as production is concerned. If there is a bad deal where they understand, this deal is not going to stick, then it's rejected. When this system then is tested for the next 36 months, then the Chinese system becomes available for the rest of the world. Then we understand why the Northern Kingdom is going to become greater than the previous. Because they are the managers of the system, at least during this primary initiation. So then we understand, Daniel the prophet mentioned, Daniel the politician mentioned, Daniel then the tradesperson, most importantly, mentioned the relationship of the northern, southern, and eastern kingdoms. And the rest of us work. And then mining, for instance, then the Soviet Union obviously is going to make investments. Simple, robust mining equipment, simple, robust trucks. And they say, we want this much of minerals, and then be at the port on a certain day. As the cargo is delivered, then the people receive their money. But then, since then President Joseph Zuma is the president of South Africa, and he's part of the BRICS, then comes the relationship of the straightening out of this plan. In other words, making sure that the Southern Kingdom understand their place as raw materials. And then Mr. Zuma then visits with the other presidents of the other countries of China, not China, but Africa. There is no more dealings with China as far as we understand at this point. Because we must understand, the extra chapter of Daniel must be completed also. So you can mix any more Baals or Balians with Dragon. Dragon, there is no time for BS. Africa, for the most time, or for the most of the dealings that they do, it's BS most of the time. Always war, people don't get along, people are dying of hunger, people are stealing the money. Come on, you want to make a pile of manure nice and have a nice fragrance of roses? No, it's a pile of manure over there. It has to be reorganized. So the Mr. Zuma, in turn, then he visits with the presidents of the other countries of Africa, and they come up with a plan. Simply mentioned, we have a plan over there in the Northern Kingdom. We can't go directly to China anymore. They are purely production. Because China has proven already worthy. They understand how to get raw materials. They understand how to transport. They understand how to smelter. They understand how to produce. They understand how to pack, and they understand how to deliver. So China is already proven worthy. And then the rest of us, we deal with the Northern Kingdom. But then the work must be done. Then we understand the 2nd chapter of Daniel, 11th chapter of Daniel, 12th chapter of Daniel, the extra chapter of Daniel. Because if the Soviet Union does not take charge, then it's going to be an absolute disorganization of the worst kind you can ever imagine. Because most monetary systems are breaking. The Eurozone is breaking. So it's going to be absolutely disorganized. So you can imagine China making deals with Europe, and then the Eurozone breaks. What is it going to be of those contracts? Only God knows. Don't even ask. As far as the United States, we are also breaking because we are not updating our tax code. So another pile of disorganization. Don't even ask. The only solution is going through the Northern Kingdom, because it must be filtered, and then production must continue on. As far as how they are going to do it in the Northern Kingdom, as far as gathering of the raw materials or smeltering of those materials in the country where they decide to get the products from, it's up to them to make a decision. What we know for sure, there is a manager in the north and there is a receiver in the east. As far as how they're going to do it, it's amongst them. So then we begin the definition of this time of the trade of the end. Then we understand Baal and the dragon. It might be awkward at first, but then the understanding is very plain. Why Baal? Baal comes from Babylonian. Babylonian comes from confusion. But dragon is never confused. So from the Balians has to have a person with the brains to get the deal through. That's why the Northern Kingdom then takes over as managers. Because it's very risky for China, for instance, being involved with Europe and with North America. It is very dangerous because they understand the Eurozone is breaking. Our monetary system in the U.S. is also breaking. We don't know for how long it's going to take, roughly 36 months. We have the backing of this understanding from Mr. Netanyahu from Israel, the backing up of IMF, both of them with the same understanding. So you can be sure of it, these next 36 months would be the perfect time to test this engine from east, north, and south. Make sure it's worthy, make sure it works, and then makes it available for the others to download on their computers and invest in products. From then on, it is simple management. Then we can understand more freighters, we can understand more packages, and there is a shift from retailers are going to be out of work, but then it's compensated by the volume of freighting. But the point is, if our government starts taxing, then either way the government can have its share. As far as we understand, there are products coming to our country, it's not even taxed. Not only should it be taxed the first time when they purchase from the factories in China or any other place, but then when a person receives the product and then gets resold, then should they have a second tax. You know why? Because there are a lot of people buying for dirt cheap, and then they are having 500% markup. It's not fair. The government must have then first tax, initial tax, and the final tax. Because if the product then has a markup of 500%, then the government does not get then the proper share of then the sale of the item. Isn't that true? Isn't that mathematical certainty? That's why the Balian system doesn't work. But the dragon system does work. We are not even taxing properly. We don't even understand, for instance, when a person is sending a package from the other side of the world. Oh, it's because a gift. Tax the gift. Has to have a taxation. Because when the package comes to our country, it must be handled. It is understandable the money is paid in the country where it's coming from. Understandable. But then our government is not receiving any money for it. And there is the handling, transportation, delivery, and the storage. It's very expensive. So it has to have some sort of a catalog where they can make a rough estimate the value of the product and charge taxes. So then the country can regain respect. Because as far as we understand, America has no respect, lost the respect. When we are charging taxes properly, then induces respect from people. But when the system is then so wishy-washy, they don't even charge a tax anymore. It's disrespectful. Because people take advantage of it. Then you find people receiving packages from abroad, government not receiving taxes, then they get the product for very cheap, they have a markup of 500%, gets sold, and the government doesn't get any share of it. Because there are sites, for instance, they don't charge any tax. So that's why the Balian system is faulty. And then you find the middleman stealing the money from the government, stealing the money from the people. Balian system is a disaster. So we should read the instructions and understand then the relationship of this time and then act as such, because the plan was given. Now we must do in line, because then people get prosperous.